Okay, everyone, this is Intro to GarageBand, Foundations. We may be presenting another GarageBand webinar later. So my name is Kana. I am a part-time staff member at DoSpace. I have over or more about 12 years of experience using GarageBand. And with that experience, I'm hoping to both give you some pretty basic introduction to GarageBand, and then I can also answer any questions you may have about GarageBand. It can be really specific or it can be really general. The webinar is scheduled till 4 p.m. So if we go till 4, it'll be because there's questions and I'm demonstrating in GarageBand something related to your questions. So next. So the first thing we're going to start about is how to start a project. So the main thing, and you're not going to see this window because the way you share the windows gets a little bit weird. So when you first open GarageBand, it'll ask you what type of project you want to open. We're opening a blank project where we're going to add everything ourselves. So that's going to be the main thing. And then obviously downloading GarageBand, you download through the App Store for your Mac, not directly online. And then after that, we'll get into actually making the music. This is going to be the majority of the presentation itself. We're going to focus on the elements of a basic electronic track. And then after that, we're going to go into saving and exporting your music for others to enjoy or just for your own records. And then we'll have a portion that is dedicated to just Q&A. That portion's time will be dependent on what questions are asked and how long those things take. Some notes I want to give about the specifics to the presentation I'm doing today. So we're going to focus on using just your Mac and GarageBand, nothing else. So we're not going to use external instruments or inputs. We're not going to use any microphones for the purpose of recording onto the track. We're just going to use what's available in GarageBand by itself. There's still a lot you can do, so that's why I'm just focusing on that. And then just the basics, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the basic elements of an electronic track. So this could be chords, beat, bass, a lead, or the melody. We're not going to get too complex with any of that. We're going to keep it pretty basic. And then, of course, we're going to be answering basic questions. So the webinar, I have some curriculum already designed, but any questions that come up can help formulate the webinar further because I have a lot of experience using this software. So the next thing we're going to do, didn't want to go to that slide. I need to share our window. Okay. Now, I don't think it's sharing this first window, so I'm just going to click Create. So it's going to start off with a default track of classic electric piano. And before I even play it, let me turn down the volume. And actually, I'm going to mute my screen. And then I'm going to put this volume down to about 15 or so. So this isn't something that you necessarily need to do when you're doing your own tracks. However, it's important here because the audio that's being captured by my mic is not particularly loud, and the music here is going to be much louder than the mic. So by default, it's going to bring up this musical typing menu. So this is a really cool function in GarageBand. As far as I know, no other digital audio workstation actually has this feature where you can use your typing keyboard to make what is called a MIDI input. And MIDI is basically just electronic music data that you can use with multiple instruments. And I'll demonstrate what that looks like a little bit later. If this window does not pop up here, you can click Window up here and click Hide, or you'll click Show Musical Typing. So we're going to play with it just a bit. So that's an example of how the musical keyboard works. So if you don't have a keyboard, a piano, and you just have GarageBand, you can play a little bit with the keyboard here, and that can be pretty fun. I'm actually not going to use the typing keyboard much, but it can be helpful if you already know how to play. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to click Command and click, and then I'm actually going to show how to do it with right click. So if you have a right click or you do control click, you're going to get this thing and click Create Empty MIDI Region. We're going to pull this over here. And then if we double click in there, we'll have this piano roll. Electronic musicians who don't know how to read sheet music, they're going to be really familiar with how piano roll works. So the basics is you have a piano over here that goes through all the notes. And you can actually click these keys here, and it's going to play those notes for you. And then there is a score function. However, it's a little bit weird, but if you're more used to musical score, this might be more useful for you. So we're going to do something called the 4 chords pattern. And I'm going to use the 4 chords pattern from the 4 chord song by Axis of Awesome. It's partially making fun of how a lot of really popular songs use these particular 4 chords in a pattern to make a lot of different songs. The reason it's these 4 chords, without explaining too much music theory to you, is that it's really easy to create different melodies on top of these chords with how they're positioned. So these chords are titled 1, 5, 6, 4. Now that probably doesn't mean anything to you, but so we're going to be in C major. I'm actually going to do it up here. And we are going to put the first note there. So this is 1. And then what is 5? 5 is 5. It's the 5th note in the key. So when you're in C major, it's only white keys. So those chord numbers make a little bit more sense when you understand that the chord number is usually based on the note associated with it, but there's Roman numerals, so it makes it very convoluted. So we have 1, 5, 6, 4. Actually, this is 4. Sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Then we're going to fill in the rest of the notes. So if you're not used to chords, the basic chords in a key are going to be made up of chords that are separated by 1 note of each other in each key. So these are actually 3rd notes in music theory, but when you're playing the white keys, there's going to be 2 in between each other. And we're going to do that up here as well. And over here. And there we go. And actually, I'm going to move these out a little bit. So that way it's not too fast. And something I actually forgot to mention is right up here. These are actually the beats of a measure. So this right here is measure 1, and it's not showing each beat number, but this right here is going to be beat 2, beat 3, beat 4, and then it goes to measure 2. You can change the time signature up here. If you're not used to these kind of time signatures, I learned a little bit more about them before using them. For most people, and the vast majority of Western music, it is going to be in 4/4. So we can keep it at that until you feel like you want to experiment. Now I'm going to do Command All, which is the key to do this. You can also just select by clicking and then pulling the box down. And then I'm going to go over here at the end of the note with my mouse, and it's going to change to this figure that has a bracket and 2 arrows. I'm going to pull this. So now each of these chords is half of a measure, 2 beats. And then right over here, that same bracket came over here and it let me change the size of the, what do they call it? A region. And then if I go up, so up on the same thing, there's a repeat symbol, and then we can actually repeat it. A lot of electronic music uses repeats, so we're going to use repeats here too. I'm going to change the BPM, so if I go over the BPM or tempo, I'm just going to pull it down just a bit. Okay, we should be fine now. So I'm going to go on and demonstrate how you make your own track new. Okay, so it's going to default to electric piano again. You've only heard a little bit of it, unfortunately. So I'm going to go over to electronic drum kit. I'm going to click Beat Machine. So this is a pretty basic one. And you might notice when you open GarageBand, you may not have all of these sounds. The reason for that, which confuses so many people because GarageBand doesn't tell you, is there's this big sound library that you have to download. It's like 2 gigabytes plus. And they don't include it by default because it just is so much data. If you click on GarageBand up at the top, which I don't think it's showing you right now, unfortunately, you just click the thing that says Sound Library and then install Sound Library. And that's how you're going to install that. But now we're on Beat Machine. So I'm going to do something similar again, where I'm going to right-click, Create Empty MIDI Region. And then over here, it's going to be similar to the piano roll, except each of these is mapped to a drum sound instead of a piano sound. So we're just going to do a 4-beat thing. Hi-hat. So this is snare. They're going to follow a similar pattern to each other, but some of them are more different. So I'm going to use a snare sound, and I move that there so I can do Control, paste, paste, paste. I'm actually going to do the rest with the key. I just wanted to make sure you saw what the function actually looked like. I'm going to move this one right there, and we're going to repeat the track so you hear more of that beat. So it's not a very fun beat. I can make more complex beats myself. It just takes a little bit more time to actually do that. So we're going to go through here, and I'm going to actually delete this entire track by doing Command Delete. And it's like, you're going to delete a track and regions. And yes, we are. And then over here, where you see this little circle thing, this is our loop browser. And now we're going to add some loops. I'm going to change the instrument to all drums. So that way it's going to show us some drum tracks. I'm going to sort it by BPM just so I can get to something over here. Let me move this down. So it is going to play these beats louder than your actual track is. So keep that in mind. So you may want to change this. So we want to get something that's kind of close to the BPM we chose. It will remap a recording to your new tempo. However, sometimes it'll sound a little bit weird just because the audio wasn't meant for the tempo you have it at. So we're not going to use a MIDI drum track for this. Let's see. So we have 100. So what's this? Okay. I want something that sounds more interesting. No, I'm just going to pull this over. Don't even know what it sounds like, but it's going to be just fine. So when you pull it over, it pulls in a beat, and this is made of real audio. It's simply recorded as a type of track called a loop, which can be sort of modulated in a different way than real audio recordings. When I do a recording audio webinar, I can explain a little bit more on that. Let me move my face over. Okay, and then I'm gonna loop this again because we wanna hear a lot of it. Okay, I like that, sounds nice. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click track, I'm gonna click new track. It's gonna ask me the same questions. And then I'm gonna click copy. I'm gonna copy this track. We're gonna do something weird with it because I said MIDI, you can change the instruments so you don't have to re-record it. So we're gonna show you how to do that. So now this is a new track. It is defaulted to electric piano, but we're gonna change it to something different, something a little bit weird. So I'm gonna go over here to arpeggiator. I'm gonna click Synth Basics. And then what do I want? I'm going to choose this one that says synthetic marimba. Sounds fun. So it's going to have all these settings here for you. Just play around with these settings. That's really the best way to figure out what the settings actually do for each instrument. Over here is a really interesting thing for arpeggiated pieces. So in arpeggiation, It's basically going to take the chords or the notes you have and not quite randomly, but it's going to choose them in a particular pattern to play them not as in chords, but as notes. So you can turn arpeggiation on and off, and I'm gonna show it on the default. We're gonna click this button right here to solo the track. The other button mutes a track. Now we're gonna play this. So that's pretty fun. So I might actually keep it like that, but we're gonna play with another one and see how that goes. Arcade Trills is one of my favorite ones, but it's not super practical. But let's just see what it does. No, I do like that, but I'm gonna change it so it doesn't use so many octaves. And we're gonna go out here and then hear the track. Okay. Now we can hear some of that, and that's pretty cool sounding. So I talked about doing the bass. So bass line is going to be a little bit different than simply arpeggiating a MIDI track. We're going to click new track here. We're going to do the same thing, and we're going to take these chords, but we are going to remap them a little bit. So in a bass line, when you're on a new chord, typically when you're sort of new to it, you're going to start with the actual bass note of the chord itself. And we're going to make a bass line that you would not typically make, but it's just going to be more demonstrative. And we're going to do 2 C's there. And obviously you don't hear bass yet. We're going to map it, but this is just easier to listen to. Okay. So we're making it all within that chord. So this is F, and I'm actually going to make it go back to C. Now we're going to change this to bass. Let's do picked bass. I'm going to solo it just so we can hear it out. Okay, now we want it to be lower right. So what I usually do is I'm actually going to pull all the notes down. However, something that's a little bit easier than pulling all the notes down is if you switch to region. So from notes to region, then click this transpose button and then go down to 12 because 12 is full octave here. And now it's a full octave down. Let's see what another octave does. It might be too low. I kind of like the darkness of it. I don't think a lot of other people like that sound, but I think it'll work just fine in the context of the rest of it. So let's hear it. So I think that works pretty well. So the next thing we're going to do is construct a melody. And this is a little bit weird to do. Let's see how it goes. So I'm actually going to take this again. And we're going to copy and paste it one last time. Now, when I said that a bass, typically when you start it, you're going to keep to the lowest note in the chord. When you construct a melody, you actually typically do the highest note. You do the highest note or the root. So we're actually going to stick with the highest note here. Let's see. I just realized something. Did I realize something? I did. So I'm going to fix the rest of these. So this is the thing with piano rolls. You don't always put on the right note. So this was supposed to be a G, not an A the whole time. I just didn't notice. It sounded beautiful, but we are going to move them all back, that's fine. Okay, now we're gonna remake our melody. So I'm actually gonna start here at G. We're gonna go over to C. Then I like this going on B next. We're actually gonna stay on B for a bit. Go to D. When you're constructing a melody, it doesn't actually have to map the chords. It's just a little bit easier to do that. Then we're gonna be on E. When you are constructing like vocal melodies and stuff, I mostly recommend just singing it out and seeing how that works for you. You can do this and it can be pretty fun. So this might sound a little bit weird, but let's see how it goes. Actually, let's give it a nice lead sound. I'm actually going to use something a little bit unusual. I'm going to go over here. We're going to click saxophone. Saxophone's a great sound for a lead instrument. And we're going to do this. Let's hear how it sounds. So that sound definitely sounds better if you had like a different like counter melody on the next track. But so those are the basics of how you kind of put it all together. There are some other things I can demonstrate here. So there's a newer feature that's in GarageBand. So we're going to take out this beat. And it's a feature I don't use a lot because it's kind of weird to me personally. So you might have noticed when we were going through the loops over here that we saw a few that were yellow. So yellow is a weird type of track that is just called a drummer track. It's not quite a MIDI track and it's not quite a real audio track. It's sort of in between, which for me doesn't actually make a lot of sense. It is at its core a MIDI track. It's just not presenting it that way. We're gonna grab one of these. And we're gonna play it by itself. Oop. Let me turn this all off. We're just gonna hear what this sounds like. So that sounds cool. So we have some features over here where we can do even more with it. So we're gonna just put up the fills. We're gonna say all the percussion, but let's say it's tambourine, hi-hat. We're gonna say all the hi-hats, all the kicks and snares, and now it's gonna sound different. So this is a weird thing that GarageBand has. It can be really fun to play around with. It works a little bit differently on the iPad. The iPad is basically a completely different piece of software when you're using GarageBand, but it does have this feature and it works pretty similar. So that's a little complex and it's a little much. So we're actually going to pull this all the way over here to where it says simple instead of complex. You can actually move it all around this thing and it will sort of do different things with the audio. We're going to say there doesn't need to be any fills whatsoever, but for some reason we want it swung so much. And we're going to swing it on the 8th because fun. So it's kind of funny to work with. So I know we don't have any questions in the Q&A, but I did want to ask if any of our attendees had any questions that they wanted to ask. I know we have one attendee right now, so if you have any questions, you can feel free to submit it in the Q&A or in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer anything. I can demonstrate as pretty much anything that I am able to demonstrate through GarageBand. If you had anything specific, we can go through that. Let's see. Don't see anything yet. So I'm trying to think of other important features that are core to GarageBand. Something else I don't use a lot is you can go over here to media and you can import stuff from iTunes or from other places, and you can import other real audio that you have from elsewhere. I can't make any suggestions on like copyright stuff, but it can be fun to take like a song you have in your iTunes, put it into GarageBand, and try to sort of recreate it on top of it. And that can be a fun thing. It's a really good way to learn GarageBand and also just how songs get mixed. So that can be something really cool. And let's see. Oh, I almost forgot the sharing and exporting thing. And actually, I think I need to share a new type of window to make this work properly. So I'm going to share my desktop now. Okay. So it should be sharing my desktop now, so that way you can see that. I mentioned earlier how to share sound library. You'll actually do it through here. Click download. There's a preferences tab. This was actually one of the problems that came up, is it did not automatically change the input and output devices here to Zoom, which every other time I tested it, it did. So that's some fun things that can happen. So when we export it, we're going to click share. So most of the time, because I have my own computer, I click share song to iTunes. This lets you put in the metadata, i.e. where the artist name, album name, etc. pops in beforehand. But since I do not own this computer, this is actually a work computer, we're going to click export song to disk. And it's going to have a name, and we're just going to say, webinar. Ooh, did not want to type that. Webinar song. And it says MP3. So MP3 is going to be the best one. These two, AAC, AIFF, are pretty good quality. I want to make it very clear that these are specific to Apple, so they don't always work on Windows computers. Wave is a universal quality sound. It is, however, not quite the same quality as AIFF. Most of the time, though, you'll just want to do MP3. To get a higher quality MP3, you're just going to click highest quality. I am actually going to do low quality because we're not going to listen to any of it, so I want it to do it fast. Then we're going to click export. So it's going to do this thing called bouncing, where it basically puts all the music together for your export of a song. And then if I go down here, open up that folder, it did not get, oh, I understand what happened. It went into a different folder. So there's that. So I partially did that to give the participant an opportunity to ask any questions, to put something in chat that showed that they wanted to know something more about GarageBand. If you have further questions about GarageBand or anything else, you can of course contact us. I'm going to share a different screen. So we're going to go back here. So this is my final slide for the presentation. So you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. This is probably where you found this presentation, or you may have found it through our website. The Facebook and Twitter is where you can find the most up-to-date information. And we always post about a webinar about an hour or so before a webinar actually goes up. If you have like general questions, long things that you want to say, you can email hello@DoSpace. And that's really a good way to like ask like more long worded questions, things that are more complex. And then if you go to our website, you can just learn more about us, read our blogs, look at our calendar for more webinars. And then when we open again, in-person programs, all of our programs are always free of charge. So that's really cool. So when you come back, it won't just be the webinars, it's gonna be free stuff as well. And then we now actually have some basic chat help you can get from the site. So when you go to DoSpace.org, there'll be a little chat button up there. Just so you know, the first chat you'll see where it says like, we're available to help you, that is a bot. Any response after that, that's a staff person such as myself responding to you, try to answer basic help. If you need more help than what we can provide in that chat, we'll just refer you to the hello@DoSpace.org and draft up a longer answer to your question. But if you have just basic things that you're looking to get help with or basic questions about DoSpace, that's a really good place to ask. And it is a live actual person who is a staff person of DoSpace. It's not to a call center or something. It's actually us answering your questions. So that can be really cool. And I want to thank those of you who attended, even though there was like an audio issue that happened at the beginning. And I hope it was helpful for those of you who are here. So thank you so much. I am going to end the meeting, and I wish the best for all of you.